Welcome to the book club's online and in-person program titled High Spirits, the Legacy Bars of San Francisco. My name is Kevin Kosick, and I'm the executive director for the Book Club of California. And it's my pleasure to welcome you all here and host this program tonight. Now, for those of you that are new to us, the Book Club of California is a nonprofit member and donor organization that is dedicated to preserving and promoting the history of the book and the book arts. Oftentimes, we do that with a focus on the history and the literature of California and the West. The book club publishes limited edition, finely made books. We have a scholarly journal called the Quarterly Newsletter, and we have keepsakes for our members. We host a year-round series of exhibitions and programs like the one this evening on topics including fine printing, design, typography, bookbinding, collecting, California history, and much, much more. Now, if you're not a member of the book club, or if your membership has lapsed and you're interested in what we do, please consider joining our century-long tradition. Our membership dues are modest, the benefits are many, and we simply can't do the work of the book club without the support of our members. So I encourage you to go online to bccbooks.org to learn more, to join, or to donate. And now for the program. Tonight's program is titled High Spirits, the Legacy Bars of San Francisco, and our speaker is J.K. Dineen. Now, J.K. Dineen is a reporter and author, and he has covered housing and real estate development here in San Francisco and beyond. He joined the Chronicle in 2014, covering San Francisco land use politics for the City Hall team. He has since expanded his focus to explore housing and development issues throughout Northern California. He has written for the San Francisco Business Times, San Francisco Examiner, the New York Daily News, the Salem Evening News, the Metro West Daily News. There's a long list here.
Yeah, you don't need to read them.
My favorite is the Watertown Press, right? He has also freelanced for Travel and Leisure and the New York Observer. He is the author of two books. The first is titled Here Tomorrow, Preserving Architecture, Culture, and California's Golden Dreams from Heyday in 2013, and High Spirits from Heyday in 2015, which is the subject of his talk this evening. Now, High Spirits, the Legacy Bars of San Francisco, leads readers on a neighborhood-by-neighborhood pub crawl in search of the city's most remarkable night spots. Tonight, you're going to hear about some of these bars, all of which at least 40 years old, and sites of significant historic or cultural value as deemed by San Francisco Heritage. Now, JK doesn't have a full illustrated presentation to share with you tonight, so if you're joining us on Zoom, you're just going to see the speaker. I'll get out of the way here, and you'll just see his face on your screen. Now, if you have questions for our speaker, you can wait to the end of the presentation. We should definitely have time to take questions and tell some stories. And we'll do that from you here in the club rooms and from you folks out there on Zoom. If you're on Zoom, you can use the chat and the Q&A to put your comments or your questions, and we'll curate our conversation at the end of the hour from there. And now it's my great pleasure to introduce J.K. Dineen.
Hey. All right, can everybody hear me okay? Excellent, okay. I just got off deadline writing about Mayor Lurie's family zoning plan. I could talk about that for 45 minutes instead if you're interested, but I'd rather not. My first book was called Here Tomorrow, and it was sort of a coffee table book published by Heyday Books, and probably a lot of you are familiar with Heyday and Malcolm, who sadly just passed away. And that was a book where the idea of the book was sort of exploring what's historic in California. I mean, beyond something designed by Julia Morgan or Maybach, or like a fancy, San Francisco City Hall with, the gilded, dome and that sort of thing. And it was about kind of drilling down into, San Francisco is a place where, California is a place where where you go to reinvent yourself, where nothing is sacred, I mean, that's always been sort of like, Hollywood, land of the imagination and the future. And rocket science. And so what we did in that book, which was a project that was done in coordination with the California Preservation Foundation, and they had been giving these awards out for about 20 years of places that had been threatened with demolition or obsolescence, or for whatever reason they had fallen on hard times. This included everything from the Ferry Building in San Francisco to the LA Public Library, which was almost knocked down at one point, to small Buddhist temple in Mendocino, to a little opera house like in Woodland with a lot of ghosts in it. And so the idea with that book was kind of like, what is valuable in San Francisco, in California, and how do you tell the story of this magical place through structures? And so for that one, I did 50 different places, and traveled all over the state. Train station in Fresno, places in Antelope Valley, this weird museum out in the middle of nowhere. I got lost a lot. And drove all over the place. And I tried to, whenever possible, make those stories about not only the structures and there was engineers and there were architects and there were preservationists involved, but also the people that they were valuable to. Like ultimately, like, why preserve something if people don't care about it? So it was like a African-American Baptist church in downtown Pasadena, again, like in the path of progress, that was slated to be knocked down, and a group of people got together and saved it. So that book came out, and I was sitting in Malcolm's office, and he said, what do you want to write next? And I said, I had this idea about doing a book. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Living Downtown by Paul Groth. It's a book about sort of people living in residential hotels back in the day. I think it was probably published in the, I don't know, 60s or 70s or something. So I was like, I had always been fascinated by residential hotels, and thought, I was like, well, okay, Malcolm, how about a book about SROs? I could just write about it. And he was like, well, you can't sell books at SROs. It's like, okay, fair point. And then he said, do you drink? And Malcolm and I are both from Boston, and I think he knew the answer. And I was like, yeah. And then he was like, how about a book about old bars? And so that piqued my interest. And then little did I know that he was already in touch with SF Heritage about, they had just launched this legacy bar and restaurant program, which was sort of an effort to take this idea of preservation and history to the next level. Like, okay, you had beautiful buildings designed by famous architects and rich people and houses on, in Newport, Rhode Island, or in Pacific Heights. And then you had, what else is valuable? These, remnants of the old Chinatown in Locke, California on the Delta, like, which is still preserved, and you can go there, and, there were once thousands of ag workers that would gamble and hang out there on the weekends. And then you had, so this is sort of like, well, what if we were just to focus on San Francisco, like neighborhood bars, and what kind of stories could you tell through that? And so this was crowdsourced. So they came up with criteria. At first, it was bars and restaurants. They're like, okay, let's start with places that have been around at least 40 years, that have some kind of continuity of community or character, or they don't have to have had the same owner the whole time. They don't have to have had even the same name. In a few cases, they might have even moved. I can't recall if that's the case with any of them, but it was more about the community of people than it was about, very few of these structures were designed by a significant architect. In most cases, you don't even know who designed it, right? I mean, the saloon, who designed that? In Vesuvio, as we know, that was actually a pretty noteworthy architect. But yeah, so the idea was, and we got 100 of these things, way too many to tell the story of, and we were doing restaurants and bars, and we made the decision to just focus on the bars, in part because the restaurants were so much more precarious than, but bars just stay around longer. I guess it's like food goes bad, booze doesn't, or maybe wine does after it's open. But I mean, it was just very much of yeah, it was just it just made sense. And also in terms of like finding a community of people to talk to, of regulars. You don't really get that as much in a restaurant, like, unless you're Willie Brown and you go to Sam's every day. You're not going to find the same people with the same stories, and so we focused on bars. I ended up doing 26 places around the city. They were focused a little bit on, and so there was a policy part of this and a law political part of this too, which is they decided to codify in code and offer benefits, real money benefits to places that were willing to document the fact that they were legacy bars. They had been around 40 years. They or restaurants or other businesses that they had contributed to the community, that they had, all these different criteria. And you went through a process where you hired a preservation historian, and you documented the history of the business, and you had to go to the Historic Preservation Commission and the Board of Supervisors. And if you did that, your landlord could get, and I can't remember what the dollar amount is, but they could get a certain amount of money. There was a fund. You get a certain amount of money per square foot for if they renewed leases for legacy businesses, and then some of the money would go to the business themselves. And so that was this whole program that was just starting out, and it hadn't really kicked in quite yet but when I was researching the book, that was what was going on in the background, based partly on a program in Buenos Aires, Argentina, called like Bares Notable, and was like aware, and then also in the UK, which was losing a lot of their historic, like especially village pubs. Young people were leaving; they weren't being replaced, and so there was just financial incentives to kind of keep these places, which are so important to the fabric of the community, and also tourism and everything else. So yeah, so just I had a little bit of a background already in. I grew up in Boston, as I mentioned. So in the preface of this book, I kind of explained where I was coming from in terms of just the perspective I brought to this project. The first pubs that I frequented were in the west of Ireland, where my father and some of his friends from Boston owned a small inn with a bar downstairs. It was a little bit like an SRO. There were couple rooms that had bathrooms, but mostly they were shared. Just a kid, well under the drinking age, I tagged along on trips to county pubs. I remember the rain-splattered windows, the Tato crisps, the Pete's peanuts clipped to the racks on the wall, the tangy bricks of peat firing in the Stanley cooker stove. Mostly I recall the talk, the crack in the circumlocution, the takedown, the one-upmanship. It was the usual topics: gossip, sports, weather, politics. But there was always a sense that what you said was less important than how you said it. In those days, pubs in Ireland often doubled as suppliers of other provisions, leather goods, groceries, hardware, creating a mix of commerce and camaraderie that brought together rubber-booted farmers and fishermen, town bankers, long-haired itinerant folk musicians of 1970s County Kerry. At least once an afternoon, a hush would descend over the room, as someone, often a quiet, gray-haired woman in the corner, would deliver a ballad, maybe Green Fields of France or Carrickfergus. So that's sort of where I was coming from when um, Malcolm asked me if I wanted to do the book. And then, so that sort of launched a year-long period where I was riding my bike around the city and going to all these places. Some of them I knew already, most of them I didn't, and interviewing regulars and bartenders and owners and former owners. And I tried to like make each chapter a reflection of, I mean, they're all sort of different, but some of them are like really a reflection of what was happening in that neighborhood when the bar started and how it had evolved. I mean, something like the double play on the corner of 16th and Bryant, you know, was built when Seals were playing at Seals Stadium, and like you walk in there, I mean, there was a fire there and it hasn't reopened, sadly, but I'll get to that later. But you walk in there and it was just a museum to the Seals and to baseball in San Francisco generally, and like the way that it had evolved, where you had Irish owners for a while, you had Italian owners, and then the last owners were this, you know, family of Mexican immigrants. The owner started out as a dishwasher there, and they cooked Italian food and breakfast burritos, and it was just a good San Francisco story. But then, like, when you go there, the regulars are, well, there's SPCA. Some of them are like 8 in the morning ones, and this woman had a Sammy, her deceased cat, in a cat carrying thing, drinking Mai Tais and, you know, lamenting the end of Sammy. And then you had like, you know, there's a post office there, and then there was, so you know, then like people, Seal baseball historians would come, and these guys figured out like that second base was like in the frozen pizza aisle, like in the middle of the Safeway across the way in the little strip mall there. And yeah, so that was, you know, I went to, you know, I was familiar with Specs and Vesuvios and Saloon a little bit, and but you know, the Philosopher's Club in West Portal, it's got a wonderful mural painted by one of the owners, Deborah Sullivan, of, you know, all these. It's got, I forget who's on there. There's, I mean, it's got Aristotle and Socrates probably, and Kant, and but then it's got like, you know, John Lennon, and then it's got like some professor from San Francisco State who's still alive. So I interviewed him. So it's like kind of weird to be up there with a bunch of dead people, you know, on the ceiling there. But yeah, so this was really about, you know, kind of expanding further the you know, kind of the definition of what's historic, of you know, trying to tell the story of the city through these places, you know, places like I mean, like Sam Jordan's, he's the first Black guy to run for mayor of San Francisco, and he was sort of a old school ward boss, in the sense that he, you know, everybody from Nancy Pelosi to Dianne Feinstein, you know, to Willie Brown, to the, you know, John Burton, who passed away yesterday, would go there to, you know, seek his blessing and get his approval, and, you know, he could deliver votes. So that was, you know, there are just all these characters like Bruno from Zam Zam. I can read, maybe I'll read a little bit of that. This is Zam Zam's on Haight Street. Yeah, so this is looking back, David uh, David Kunikuntz thinks he was lucky Bruno didn't throw him out when he walked into Zam Zam in 1985. Kunikuntz was dusty after hanging sheetrock all day in a building around the corner. He was joking around with his colleague, thirsty and boisterous after 10 hours of noisy work. Perhaps Bruno was in a charitable mood, or he took pity on a couple of guys covered in plaster powder and paint chips. Bruno liked hard workers. Whatever the reason, he didn't do what he usually did when customers fell short of his exacting code of decorum. He didn't suggest that Gudikans would find the corner bar more appealing. Instead, Bruno simply said, "Gentlemen, please, pianissimo." He then took their order. Gudikans was impressed. Who was this short, plump character in a vest, tie, and cufflinks, monogrammed shirt, on the boulevard of beads, bongs, and runaway hippies? "I didn't know the whole rigmarole about Bruno," he said. The rigmarole about Bruno, it's still on the menu at the Zam Zam 30 years later. Bruno died in 2000, but at some point, most afternoons, the discussion at the small semicircular bar circles back to the myth of Bruno Mushi, the crusty contrarian who became a Haight-Ashbury icon by railing against the very peace, drugs, and rock and roll the neighborhood was famous for. You come in through these doors and it's like he passed away yesterday, said bartender Joseph Tessitore. Bruno was born in 1920 in Baghdad, and the Assyrian parents were en route to the United States from what is now northern Iran. Arriving in San Francisco, the family settled in a flat on the corner of Haight and Ashbury Street, opening a 5-stool greasy spoon called the Pall Mall. By 1941, by then it was well established in the city. Bruno's father, Sam Moshi, opened the Persian Zam Zam at 1933 Haight Street. He hired John Ashana, a fellow Assyrian, to design an exterior with decorative Moorish archways and twin minarets, and an interior mural on canvas depicting the tragic love story of King Khosrow and Princess Shirin. It was Sam trying to build a perfect little shrine to what he loved about Baghdad, said Zam Zam bartender Kandar Batwin. The Haight Street that Bruno grew up on felt like a village tucked between Golden Gate Park and Buena Vista Park. Shopkeepers knew each other. Streetcars staggered up Haight Street to Golden Gate Park. The neighborhood had two of the city's Marquette high schools. Lowell, then located at Hayes and Masonic Street, and Polytechnic, where Bruno went. The Poly Lowell football game on Thanksgiving regularly drew 10,000 fans to Kezar Stadium. In the afternoon after school, Bruno swept the floor at the Pall Mall and waited on bookies who took wagers in the basement. Once Bruno found a $10 bill a gambler had dropped in the stairs. He celebrated by taking friends to the soda fountain. There's more about his history, but I'm going to skip a little bit. The crazier Haight Street got, the fussier Moshi became. Women got napkins, men did not. A martini was served with a chilled 3-ounce glass. It was made by Board's gin and Bossier vermouth in a ratio, he often said, of 1,000 to 1. Upon entering the Zam Zam, a customer was to do 3 things: sit at a stool, put the money on the bar, and order a proper drink. A beer was not a proper drink. If a group of newly arrived patrons deliberated too long, Bruno would stand, smoke, and watch them. Finally, when they were ready, he would say, "I came over here to try to give you good service, but you refused it. So why don't you go to the corner bar? You'll like the corner bar. They have young bartenders with beards. You came in with money and a purpose. You didn't stare like a flycatcher with your mouth open," said Baydwin. Bruno became famous for saying no and tossing people out of the bar. His truculence was the subject of a 4,200-word essay in the London Review of Books by the poet August Kleinheiler. One day, a producer from Nightlife, David Letterman, called to see if the talk show host could be thrown out of the Zam Zam. Bruno was not impressed. "Who is this David Letterman?" he asked the regulars. "I do not know this person. Why do these people bother me? He must be some New York person." Bruno hated New York. He didn't like anything east of Reno. When he was behind the bar, Bruno drank old tennis shoes, a shot of bourbon. He called them Shotskis. He smoked Pall Mall unfiltered. He worked 4 nights a week. When he didn't feel like working, he simply didn't open the bar. He was a dues-paying member of the Local 2, the Hotel and Restaurant Union, but never had a boss, never mind an employee. On Sundays, Bruno and his pals would go out for steaks that hit Cattleman's in Santa Rosa or Flames in San Jose. When he went to Reno, he called it going on strike. Bruno died of prostate cancer in 2000 at the age of 80. Before he passed away, he sold the bar to Clark, who I mentioned earlier, a regular who lived upstairs. Clark hinted at hired an art restoration specialist to clean up the mural. Took her 3 days to dig through the layers of nicotine. I just felt fortunate to be able to preserve as much of a piece of San Francisco history. To mark the bar's 40th anniversary in 1983, one of the Zam Zam regulars put together a promotional pamphlet. It laid out the narrative of the Haight-Ashbury as Bruno saw it. Life was simple until the sinful 60s arrived. Some of the villages were able to seek refuge in Bruno's establishment. While the marauders marched down Haight Street, Bruno cut slices of lemon peel and pierced olives with golden toothpicks. That's just like one profile of one of the many characters in this book. There's Specs, there's Sam Jordan's, and yeah, so it's just some of the chapters are about people more, like that one, where it's really like the character of the owner is like the main thing. Some of it's more about the neighborhood and how that sort of impacted, like for example, the Philosophers Club is very much, it's West Portal, which is Portal, like all the work, everybody back then, everybody put on a suit and went down and worked in the financial district and insurance companies or whatever kind of jobs they had. And then they took the streetcar back to West Portal, or they were there cops or whatever, but there was a very much, and so it was a place where people got off and had a drink before they went home. And then there was all the Catholic schools around there, and it's very like sort of Irish Catholic part of town. So you had, the owners told me that they couldn't put, there were so many coaches from like Reardon and SI and Mercy and stuff, they couldn't leave napkins on the bar because they were always drawing up plays on the napkins. They would just disappear, and so they had to request a napkin. But yeah, I mean, I really learned so much about the city just researching this book, and like riding my bike around hundreds and hundreds of miles, all over the place. If you read the afterword in this book, the epilogue, it's a lot of it's sort of about development pressures and gentrification and yuppies and condos and rising rents, and kind of like, will these places survive? The old people are dying off, and out of the 26 places in the book, 7 of them are gone. One of them, you could argue, has been changed a lot. But I'm not counting as gone. But really, when I look at the list, like none of them were redeveloped as condos. There were fires at 2 of them. The double play, which I was talking about earlier, which I still hope it will reopen. Liverpool Lills over by the Presidio, which was very much of a situation where the landlord hated the business owner and the business owner hated the landlord. And when the fire happened, they just went their separate ways. The Gangway, which was the first gay bar in California, arguably, on Larkin Street. It had like a prow of a ship coming out of the front of it, and it was sort of, originally it was military service, gay military servicemen who'd go in there, and then Polk Street was, before Castro Street, was like the gay epicenter of it's where the Gay Pride March started. It's where and there were just a dozen like gay bars up and down Larkin and Polk, and so that was like a whole scene. It was one of the last. There's still 1 or 2 like cinches, I guess, but that was like kind of, but even when I was there, like the average age was, well up there. Not too many spring chickens, but so like their clientele was literally, dying off, and and then it was bought by a Korean family, and they cater to, I don't know what it's like now, but I think they cater to younger people that and so that place, and actually the new owners were really nice. They gave to there's a group, um I forget the name of it. There's They were involved in resurrecting the stud. But there's a group of people that um got some of the ephemera and maybe like some of the architectural features out of Gangway, and it's in storage somewhere. So if that bar could ever be reopened, moved, I mean, the stud moved, so places can move. Um, so you have, let's see, fire, changing neighborhood, um, Lefty Doodle, jail. That happens. The guy went to jail. That's unfortunate. Um, Taking bribes, you shouldn't do that. Um, and then there was let's see, Cha 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 on Mission Street, which was like original McCarthy's, and they tried to have it both ways. It was like an Irish. It's in the book. It's like yeah, an Irish bar at a Cuban restaurant, which I said was better than a Cuban bar at an Irish restaurant. But and then that, like, the hybrid model, it's a huge room. It didn't, they went under during COVID. And that's the other thing is literally these places were closed for a year. And it was all kinds of weird rules. Like, restaurants could serve to go cocktails without food, but bars that weren't in the food business at all had to serve food with to go cocktails. So it's like, so people are like just making it up, hot dogs or pretzels, but it's just stupid. But a lot of these places, I remember, I live in Noe Valley, and I remember like the town square in Noe Valley, you'd have like the Dubliner people over there, the Peaks people are over there, the Valley Tavern people. It was just like people kind of would just go and hang out with their friends that they usually went to the bar with outside. And there was just like these little communities, people. Um, and then, yeah, Sam Jordan's closed. I think that was more of a family situation where, you have it's like the founder situation with like nonprofits or a lot of companies where like the families just, they don't have what it takes to continue the business. Either they're not interested, or they're not good at it, or they don't have the passion, or it's too much work. And running a bar is a tremendous amount of work, and you have to put up with a lot of yeah, it's just a difficult thing. So I mean, I do feel like, part of I cover real estate, but bars are really like precarious position between, on the one hand, too much a hot economy can kind of kill them off, because you've got people that'll offer, if your lease is up or you don't own the building, people will come in, offer more rent. Then you have something like a pandemic where nobody shows up anymore. You have and so and then you have the whole Gen Z thing, which is I don't know if you guys have read. I wrote a story about I covered this panel at the San Francisco Nightlife Commission, and the topic was where did our customers go and how can we get them back? And the room was packed, and so I wrote a story where I interviewed like the owners of the Great American Music Hall and the Hotel Utah and Bottom of the Hill and a bunch of other places, and just that, Gen Z is just not drinking. I mean, their the boomers take the cake, 25 billion last year on alcohol. Millennials second, 23.4 billion. Gen X, that's me, we do okay, 23.1. Gen Z, 3 billion. So it's just they're not drinking, and so good for them. But the owner of, pardon me, Oh, yeah, yeah, that's the other thing. They're like high on all kinds of things. Right, they're doing other things. Yeah, they drink hop water and Red Bulls and tap water. Um, but yeah, and they also like they just have. I mean, that's and so like a lot of bars and nightclubs and music venues are having to like figure them out, right? And it's a lot of it is they need to be doing something, like they need to be making like paper mache poppy flowers or yoga or Irish storytelling. They do that at Casement, which is a really cool like young Irish bar in Mission Street. I really love it. Needlepoint, they have techno brunches at 10 a.m. uh where everybody wears black and sunglasses. And the guy was like, yeah, it's like a Berlin nightclub at 11 in the morning. Yeah, it's like, okay. I'm playing pickleball then. But like it's gimmicks, right? I mean, even in the Vesuvio's chapter, you know, the Henry Lenoir, or whatever his name was, like the original, one of the original, I think he was the original. Yeah, he sold beatnik kits. It was like for $5, like, you know, yeah, don't look at the beatniks, be one. And you'd get like a little, I don't know what you get. Uh Maybe glasses and a beret, yeah. I don't know. So I don't know. I feel like I'm not ready to write off Gen Z. I'm not ready to write off San Francisco bars. If you look at bars that are doing like really well right now, uh, like the Royal Cuckoo Oregon Lounge and in the Mission, which is just packed every night, and they have a Hammond organ behind the bar. They have live music 7 days a week, never a cover, and I don't know how many. It's so Chris Siebert's the organist. LeVay Smith is his wife. LeVay Smith in the Skillet Liquors. That she's been around forever. She doesn't play every night, but a lot of other people she plays. She's probably there twice a week. But Chris is the house organist. But then every night people come in from all over, people that play at SF Jazz or Yoshi's or people on tour. Like the best musicians in the world will come in at 11:30 at night and just jam. And it's just like one of the best jazz bars in the country. And there's never a cover. And then on Monday night, somebody gave them a Steinway piano. He had turned down, the owner, Paul Miller, had turned down many pianos because he doesn't want to like have a bunch of people playing chopsticks. Which is why you lock the piano or you put something over it. But now on Mondays they have piano. It's great. It's like 7 o'clock, pretty early. Yeah. So I'm not. It's easy to be a pessimist. Um, I went to another place called the Fate, the place that has the Berlin nightclubs, and they do all this stuff that I was talking about, all the art stuff, and they have great open mics on Wednesday nights, and it's like spelled like hate, but with an F, the Fate. It's just a collective, and I don't know, it kind of feels like maybe what stuff felt like there like 50 years ago. It's just real community of artists and bakers and people coming together to have fun and do cool stuff.
What's that name again?
It's called the Fate. It's spelled like the hate with an F. Yeah. It's right in Lower Haight though. Yeah, Lower Haight. Very cool place. How am I doing on time? Okay. Maybe I'll read a little bit more. I'd like to read a little bit from. There's two places that closed down. That one of them was Sam Jordan's. The other one is the Silver Crest, which was like Silver Crest Donut Shop on Bayshore, kind of across from Lowe's, which was it was so weird. Very, you walked in and there's like a little tiny dark bar on the right, and then sort of a big diner on the left where they serve the worst food you could imagine. And then they had like 7 pinball machines. They were all exactly the same. And then like the people were like so rude, but like but then they would warm up to you, like Nina. There's this old Greek couple. So the Silver Crest never closes. It says so right above the door, spelled out in red neon. We never close. Nina and George bought the Silver Crest in 1970. Since that day, they've never turned off the grill, never locked the door, never extinguished the fluorescent lights above the faux wood paneled dining room. That's 16,500 days of donuts, over easy eggs, and complimentary shots of ouzo, which is what you get if you venture into the dim back barroom and Nina decides you look all right. The Silver Crest is part roadhouse, part donut shop, part greasy spoon. The bar and back is separated by a wall and row of windows. Opened in 1895, the place started out as a gas station and provision store, serving traffic on what was then called the old San Bruno Toll Road. It morphed into what it is today in the 1940s as manufacturers, printers, general contractors, and building material suppliers staked their claim on what became Bayshore Boulevard, a congested 110-foot wide, 4-lane hodgepodge cutting between the industrial Bayview and the freeway. Nina and George came to San Francisco from Tripoli in November of 1959. Nina worked in a laundry. George was a mechanic at a factory. His crew used to go to the Silver Crest for a slice of pie and a cup of coffee. But work was unpredictable, and George thought he might prefer New York or Chicago. But Nina didn't want to leave San Francisco, so he looked around for a place to buy. He wasn't supposed to be no restaurant owner, Nina said. Nina and George didn't think the Silver Crest needed much in the way of improvement. They installed the interior windows between the bar and the diner. They moved the 8-stool bar from the east to the west wall. Aside from that, it has not changed in 1962, according to Edward Fast Eddie Pagan, who's been hanging out there since that year when he was 15. I remember when Nina bought the place. She was standing over there by the door with George, young and pretty. At the time, Bayshore had more industry and a lot less fast food. 3 miles down the road in Visitation Valley, more than 1,000 workers manufactured metal locks at the Schlage Lock Factory. In the 1970s, business was brisk enough that it took 3 waitresses to handle the crowds on the dining floor. The parking lot sparkled with the chrome and fins of big American cars. They used to have pies and cakes lined up on the counter, and the coffee was 15 cents a cup, said Pagan. But Bayshore Boulevard, dumping ground for garbage that most San Francisco neighborhoods would reject, gradually changed. In the 1980s, McDonald's, Jack in the Box, Domino's, Burger King's, all built on land previously home to warehouses. Schlage Lock shut down in 1999. Goodman Lumber closed down in 2005 and sat empty for 5 years until Lowe's built there. Nina is still upset about all the fast food. We tried to buy the lot across the street in 1983. We put money down. They didn't give it to us. They gave it to McDonald's for the fast food. She said, who knows what happened? They destroyed it, made it ugly. They bring in the homeless people. It was all working people down here before. Today, the Silver Crest is rarely busy, but its regulars are faithful. As a recent workday drew to a close, Alan Charles Clare III entered the bar. His boots were soggy from hanging scaffolding all day in the rain. He bow-legged it past the pool table with a limp. Al knows his way around a pool table. Oh, Mom, I'm so tired, he told Nina. Been up since 5. Got to get out of these wet shoes. Nina, everyone calls her Mom, sat hunched over on a stool in a purple turtleneck and shawl. She opened a bottle of Bud and poured Al's brandy shot. Al gets paid at the end of the month, and that's when he settles his bill. Nina knows everything about her mostly male regulars, when their parents are in the hospital, how their grandkids are doing in school, when their ex-wives are giving them a hard time. Al hits the Silver Crest twice a day, before work and after he gets off. When he jumps on a Greyhound to see his sick mom in Colorado, he makes sure to call and check in with his other mom at the Silver Crest. It's my little spot, he said. They treat me like a VIP, as poor as I am. I ain't really poor. I'm just saying Nina and George treat me well. Nina is thoroughly unimpressed by the Silver Crest history. She could not care less about the people who owned it before she and George took over. It don't make no difference, she said. The people died. You can't bring them back. What do I care about today? It's going to rain or not rain. nor is she interested in keeping up with the times. The TV in the corner doesn't work. Customers have the choice between one draft beer, Miller, and one bottled beer, but they won't poach your eggs. They won't make you an omelet. The donuts are made twice a day. The jukebox is 50% 1971 and 50% 1984. That was the last time it was updated. Patti LaBelle meets New Kids on the Block. 6 of the numbers are simply labeled Greek song. You can play 3 tracks for a quarter. Al says you can get 4 tracks if you know how to drop the quarter in just so. He doesn't have a quarter right now, but Chris Early does. Chris is a carpenter by day and a blues guitar player by night. He wears a pork pie hat and silver goatee. He stops by after work every day, splitting his time between his brother's couch in Bernal Heights and his pad in Nevada City. Like most regulars, Chris knows the jukebox by heart. He likes the Greek tunes because he said those old Greeks pretty much downloaded the Persian scale, whatever that means. Give me a number, said Chris. U3, said Al. I love to see you smile. Bobby Blue Bland. I'll play it second. First up is L2, Red Sails in the Sunset. It's by Tom Hall. Al can carry a tune. Red Sails in the Sunset, way out to sea, he sang. It's 1974 all over again in here, said Chris. It's old-fashioned, but it works, said Al. This ain't never going to change. George and Nina will remain the same. That's one thing for sure. Anyway, there's a little bit more, but I think it's 6:48. So questions? Is that? Yeah, is that?
Questions?
Yeah.
Tell the story, we could do that and then we can go to questions.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. Let me, so yeah, that was, Silver Crest closed, so sad. I don't know. I mean, but it's just a situation where a lot of people in this book, even though it's 10 years old, are no longer with us, unfortunately. It's just like Specs died. I've Jack Hirschman, the poet in here, he died. I'm gonna depress everybody. Who did? Oh, yeah, Lawrence. Yeah. But yeah, LaRock. I mean, I would say one thing about what may be fading. I mean, if neighborhood bars are become a thing of the past, I mean, I really think it's one of the few places that lots of different kinds of people get together. You know, the city's so polarized. Everybody's online. Reddit. You know, some people are on Blue Sky. That's liberal. Some people are on X. That's like crazy. Then there's like, Reddit, which is, I don't know. I mean, it just seems like everybody's siloed and people aren't going to work as much, which is the whole work from home thing doesn't help. So I do feel, and then if people aren't drinking anymore, which is healthy, but people are, so yeah, I do feel like there's a little bit of that. Like if you want to meet some Trump supporters in San Francisco, I can tell you where to go. Like, and also where you will find like Trump supporters, like watching Giants games with Bernie supporters and get along, good friends, right? Like La Rocca's Corner in North Beach, which is just Mike Roddy, the owner, he used to own a place, and it's all old San Francisco, Reardon, SI, SH, like, Irish, Italian neighborhood kids that all like still hang out together and they're 60 or whatever. And Roddy used to own a place called called Roddy's Fish Bowl in the Sunset. And the motto there was, come for the ambiance, leave in an ambulance. And they actually had to shut down because somebody did have to leave in an ambulance. But he's got a heart of gold, like that guy too. He comes across as like a blustery jerk or whatever, like big mouth, but like he helps out a lot of people, and lends people money, and yeah. So that's what else do I have in here? The end up. Yeah, and the Pied Piper, that was a story about the Parish Maxwell painting, Maxwell Parish, sorry. Yeah, of the Pied Piper behind the bar, and the owners tried to sell it. They like took it to New York. They're going to put it. It was listed at an auction like Sotheby's, and Ed Lee and I mean Architectural Heritage freaked out, and Ed Lee I think actually wrote a letter, and they either it was like the best like PR scam ever, like marketing scam ever, and they never intended on selling it, but or it was just like it was saved by preservationists. But yeah, that's um, yeah, that's about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a million stories.
You want to
Actually,
take some questions?
yeah, I was gonna say I
Oh, yeah.
ordered a big box of books and it's coming tomorrow. I ordered it like 2 weeks ago, and they were like, it was supposed to come like Thursday or Friday, and it's coming tomorrow. So if anybody would like to wait, I will meet you. You can come to the Chronicle. I'll meet you wherever. Sign your book. Anybody, I can give you my email
Maybe we
address.
can coordinate it here.
Yeah, that would
Yeah,
be fine.
So if you get the books,
Yeah.
everyone will get an email saying if you're interested in a book, here's how to get the book. And then I'll collect them all here.
That
and
sounds
I'll
good.
sign them all
Yeah.
here, and I'll collect money for
Yeah.
you. And,
Okay. Yeah, that sounds perfect.
As opposed to you
Okay.
trying to meet up with
Yeah.
80
Thank
different people.
Thank you. Yeah.
And that'll go also for the folks who are on Zoom. If they're
Yeah.
interested.
Yeah,
We can send
absolutely.
that out to the Zoom folks as well if they're interested in getting the book, and we'll coordinate.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Questions?
So your room balls,
Yeah.
so how does this compare? Did you ever do any, you were old enough, you drank in Boston?
Yeah. I mean,
How's this the difference?
okay, when I was there in Boston, which was kind of the height maybe of or a height of the Irish diaspora. So there was just tens and thousands of Irish people my age coming over from County Cork and Kerry and Dublin and Galway and everywhere. And so like that was sort of what was going on in my world then. And there were all these like, because the older generation of Irish bars were, just sort of leprechauns and shamrocks and like, and so this was like there was all these young people, some quite a few of them educated and sophisticated, and they were opening really good Irish bars with live music, traditional Irish music. And so that was sort of my world. I would say a lot of that's gone. A lot of those people left, went home because they had the Celtic Tiger and they haven't been replaced by nowadays. In order to come here as an Irish person, you have to be sponsored by Google or something like that. Like you can't just come over as a construction worker or you have to have a job before you come over. And so the kinds of jobs that a lot of so there are Irish people that come here, but they're like doctors or engineers and so they're not the kind of working class Irish that we used to have in San Francisco too. And when I first got here, which was 2002, but Boston, we have way better bars here. It's just, I mean, there's a few good places in Boston, but yeah, no, nothing. I don't think anything compares to San Francisco. We have more just crazier, more culturally interesting, more character, and they're like pretty much in every neighborhood except for maybe Presidio Heights. No, I don't know. But yeah, so I don't know. I really think like it's one of the real strengths of San Francisco in my book. Yeah.
I think we had a question here in front. Yeah.
There's a bar on Union Street that claims to be the smallest bar in the city. I think it's called the Black Horse.
Oh yeah.
Is it worth a visit or?
Might be. So
there's always a lineup.
here's what I don't know that place really, but what I will say is that if there's 7 places that close down, I would love to do a new edition of the book where I like write a new introduction sort of about like what happened in the last 10 years. And then because there's so many places I left out, and maybe that could have been one of them. I'm not sure how long it's been around or the history. But I would love to revisit the topic and hit a bunch of the places that I didn't get to the first time.
So your book is not all of the legacy bars that have gone through this process through the sample.
No, I mean, the legacy, there's so many legacy businesses now too, you know, I mean,
Okay.
yeah, automotive and, you know, everything, all kinds of businesses. So no, it's not everyone, no. Yeah.
Did the ship in Jackson Square make those?
The old ship?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, and that's another one. I mean, some of it was just like I had limited time, and if it wasn't, if I didn't like connect with the owners or with somebody there that was a lot of these bars have sort of a resident historian, and it might be the owner, it might be a regular in some cases, it might be a bartender, but like somebody who is like really excited to like introduce me to people. And you know, I mean, I would say another one is the Little Shamrock, which and Gino and Carlos, but those were three that would absolutely should be in the next edition. But for whatever reason, like Gino and Carlos, I think when I was researching the book was like kind of in the process of turning over the next generation. One of whom is a reporter at the Chronicle who I worked with. Now he's at Politico. But like, so now I know him and his brother and his cousin, and I would have total access there. But back then, like, they just never called me back, and I had, you know, I have a job and I had two kids, and you know, I can't like, you know, I'm not gonna beg, you know.
We'll go in the back.
If you visit McSorley's Saloon in New York, which has been open continuously since the 1840s, mostly who you're going to run into there is 22 and 23-year-olds.
Yeah.
Because it happens to be around the corner from Cooper Union, and so it has always had the benefit of having this continuously young clientele. I think that also tells us that classic bars and young whippersnappers are not a mismatch.
No, for sure. Yeah.
So, one thing that's very dependable about San Francisco, in addition to the fog, is the new flight of young whippersnappers that always kicks off
Yeah.
the planes and the buses every June, graduates from Indiana State, decide
Yeah.
they want to live out their dreams here in San Francisco. I mean, we're all those young whippersnappers. Where would you send them? Because we certainly don't want to tell them, sorry, everything's.
I mean,
turn around and go home.
Yeah, I think I see a lot of young people at the Royal Cuckoo and in the Mission. I think, you know, they do go to like Balboa Cafe and the bus stop, which I actually researched the bus stop, but I didn't make the book. I mean, so they're, you know, the Marina North. I mean, you do see them at Specs, a certain kind, you know, in Vesuvios, like, and in the book I quote Tony Leosi, who was a rock critic at originally the Providence Journal and then the LA Times, and then he became a bartender. And his daughter Joanne Leosi, who's a writer, she puts on concerts in that little alleyway between. And she wrote a book called like Drinking at Vesuvio, and between the little alleyway, Jack Kerouac alley probably. Yeah, so she puts on concerts there, and it's great. And that she attracts a ton of young people. And Janet Clyde, who owns the Vesuvios, is very, you know, she's a great businesswoman. She's smart. She's focused on getting, you know, it's very welcoming. I mean, I think that's, I'm trying to think like what other, yeah, I just think you know, you need new blood, you need welcome, you need good bartenders, you need friendly people. Some bars you walk into and it's just like, why am I here? Like 5 old guys looking at their phones, you know, a game on, like, it's just not a great environment. So yeah, but like something like I would send them to Casements on Mission Street, which has good food, and it's sort of a it's I would say it's like sort of a gay friendly Irish pub with like a really beautiful like beer garden in the back. And yeah, that's one of my favorite like new spots that I've discovered in the last few years.
We'll take a couple more. We'll go here in the front, there in the back, and then way in the back. And then we'll come back to you.
One of the questions I had was that clearly these traditional bars have been around for a long time. The places that you've mentioned that have changed their atmosphere, are you thinking that if these classic bars began having an atmosphere for younger people that would feel like there was something happening going on, interesting, whatever, that those traditions would continue? And
Yeah.
stay like the Silver whatever.
Right,
It's gonna disappear because
right.
it served a different audience.
Right, and if somebody cool were to take over the Silver Crest and have like jazz and like good food and like, I mean, that place would draw a lot of people. I mean, I really believe that because it's sort of, it's quirky and it's different and it's just, it feels, I don't know. It's from the 1950s and I think people would really like it, but yeah, Gen Z, they don't want to just go sit in a dark bar. It has to, there has to be something. You have to offer them something else. So yeah, you know.
Thank you.
Of the bars in your book, which one is your favorite?
Repeat the question so everybody on.
Okay, which is my favorite out of the bars in the book? Oh man. I mean, I love Specs. You know, I would say that's, you know, I don't go, the Chronicles movie, I don't know if you guys knew that, where at least temporarily, but I think temporarily they mean like 10 years. So we're moving to 450 Sansom because they're going to be renovating our building and building a new housing building next door. So that's the excuse anyway. But Hearst Corporation bought this building, 450 Sansom, for super cheap because of the pandemic. It's a totally renovated, nice office building right near the Transamerica Pyramid. That would be very close to Specs and the old ship. And, you know, so we'll be going to different spots there. But yeah, I would say, yeah, Specs would probably be my number one choice. I like, I mean, I don't make it necessarily to these places that much, but like if I'm going to the Giants game, I'll stop in Hotel Utah. You know, if I, and now I have a 21-year-old and a 20-year-old. So my 21-year-old I've brought to a few places. My 20-year-old I brought to one place. But,
Yeah, surely Temple.
yeah. Wild Side West is cool. Philosopher's Club's very special. I'm hardly ever in West Portal, but I love going in there. They're so nice. Yeah. But
Okay, two more. You're all the way in the back, and then we're gonna go. Come on,
Yeah,
wait. You're okay. All the way in the back first.
All right, thanks. Have you been to the Horsey Bar on 19th?
oh yeah, so that Paul and Deb sold that to so the owners of the Royal Cuckoo sold it to an employee and his buddy who's now dating Paul and Deb's niece. So it's all in the family. That place is great, and they do a really good job of attracting like super young people. Yeah, yeah,
It's almost just like a pencil box.
yeah. And I used to hang out there before the pandemic because the owners used to be in there all the time, but now they're always in the organ bar, which is closer to my house. So I'm there. Yeah,
Okay,
but
Kate.
good
and then wait.
question.
I just, was your book published by Heyday or Chronicle?
Heyday. Yeah.
Good short question.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Are Gen Zers being attracted to more kind of, I don't know if you call them gimmick bars or event bars like Last Rites and Bourbon and Branch and Local Edition? I mean, those kind of exclusive hidden
Yeah.
bars with no, is that?
I think that those places are, and I'm good friends with the owner of all those places, Brian Sheehy. I think that those places are not doing particularly well, except for the ones that have live music. So he owns the Dawn Club and Local Edition. They have live jazz in those two places, and they're doing really well. Some of the others, not so much. I just think like there's a social awkwardness thanks to the pandemic and everything else where you know, Gen Zers like want to be doing more than one thing, or you know, it's not just enough to hold a drink. And so like live music, an art show, something else happening, bocce ball maybe. Yeah. So but yeah, I think, and you know, part of the reason that those places are struggling too is that they really relied on convention and tourism, and that hasn't come back nearly to the degree that it should have by now, but it's coming back. So yeah.
Everyone, please join me in thanking our speaker, J.K. Dean. we've got to use some of the book signing time for some questions.
Oh, great.
Have
Okay,
some books.
perfect. All right.
But I will send out an email about how you can get the book or copy of the book signed, and we can coordinate that with you.
That
So,
would be great.
so thanks again to our speaker, again, J.K. Deneen. And to you for attending this book club program. It's great to have you here in the club rooms and joining us on Zoom. Thanks, everyone. You can register for any of our programs at bccbooks.org/programs or in the emails that you're getting from us, or you can call me and I'll register you for a program. Thanks, everyone, for coming. We'll see you again soon.